through the power of felt and sewing, we're gonna make a critter. So I'm not entirely sure which critter or what kind of thing we're gonna be doing at the moment, but let's sketch out some ideas, shall we? Alright, so I want to do something relatively small, so let's say starting right here. And this is just a really basic how to go from no pattern to having a full finished product with just some felt and some thread and a needle. That's all you would need for this. You don't need a sewing machine, you don't need buttons, and something to stuff it. You need something to stuff it, so. But for this bit, there's been a lot of issues with bats with everything happening. And they're really good pollinators, which I'm putting together a post about bats on my ethnobotany channel, The Amazing Plant Project, so it'll be linked in the iCard up here. So yeah, give that a click through when you're done here. But for this one, okay, there we go. I can actually see it now. Okay, so we've got a basic, real basic, just circle shape for that. And to have some definition between a head and a body, I'm just gonna kind of curve it in a little bit on the sides. Right, like that. And for bats, a lot of times the head is more prominent than the feet, mostly because when you see them, they're upside down and the feet are on one solid point and the head's down here actually visible. But for purposes of this little dude, that sort of thing. Okay. There we go. Okay. Alright, now, for that, a lot of times I'll just cut out the side that looks the most like what I want it to do, which in this case it'd probably be this side, the left, and then just fold it over and replicate it on the right, so that it's a mirrored image and everything is even, because then it's a lot easier to cut out pieces and stuff too. So we'll do that, and then it's a lot easier to do the additional parts once you have the baseline. So we're right back. And so we've got the scissors, and as I was saying before, you need some stuffing. So for the stuffing, we've got a mixture of the offcuts from the pom-pom bunny tutorial thing, the Daiso kit that I'll leave a link up in the iCard too and down in the description if you want to check that out. So we've got some scrap yarn bits and then a handful of polyfill, which I'll have a link to for Amazon too if you'd like to get some of that. Otherwise, just random bits of scrap material and stuff work for that. So for this, you're going to want to fold it in half, and a good judge of that is wherever the halfway markers are. And then my light source is right by the camera, so it's going to be kind of awkward, but basically hold it up to the light and see if you can see the other outline through it. Alright, there we go. And this is just like a regular piece of printer paper. That's usually what I end up using for pattern pieces and stuff. And then you can either transfer them to a heavier cardstock or something else once you get a pattern that really works for what you want it to do. Or you could just keep these, just knowing that you might need to make a copy of it at some point. Okay. that is our base. And when you're doing the pieces, you either need to go into it with the assumption that that has the seam allowance included, so the bit that you're gonna sew down, or with the assumption that when you put it on the material you're working with, that you're going to put an extra seam allowance around it. So just keep that in mind when you're making your pieces. Alright, now, because we're doing a bat, we need ears and wings. So, for my little bat dudes, usually, okay, let's say one ear starts here, and it's like, and then one ear starts, where's the halfway point? That would be useful. Okay, one second. And then sometimes, especially when the light's really bright shining on it, if you just kind of put a few extra pencil marks on the midpoint, it's a lot easier to see. There we go. It's a lot easier to see where the midline is in what you're working with. Alright, so we've got the midline right here. And ears for bats are usually pretty big, so we'll say, and honestly this isn't supposed to be a realistic, shall we say, size, it's more like chibi size, but that works. Bats are cute. So there's that, and we'll say that that's an ear. Extend it down a little bit, kind of round it off, and then you have an ear. And you're gonna want to cut 2 of these guys and 4 of the ears. So you might want to just 2, 4. Okay. So you have that. That's taken care of. And I generally like to just keep it in the same spot like that, and do the other limbs and stuff too. So let's say the wing starts here. This is the shoulder, sort of, so go in there and then comes out here. I can scoot this guy up a little bit. There we go. Okay. And then wings for bats tend to, where is it? There we go. Tend to kind of curve up a little bit and then come down and then, you know, kind of have a scallop like this. So we've got that one coming down, that one going up, that one going up. And then to add a little bit more stability to the base there, if you just extend the baseline that the wing is going into, then it has more to secure it. Otherwise, it'd be pretty thin right there. So now, this is a hot mess, but just to make sure that you have where you want it to go, if you go back over the definitive lines that you want to use. Case in point right here. Let's see. Yeah. All of this right here. Yeah. Let's turn that back up. And again, you extend it a little bit. Fill in that. And then you want 4 of this one too, because you're doing front and back for both sides. You could technically do 1 layer of each, so it would just be 2, but it gets really flimsy that way. Cut these out. Okay, so there's our wing. There we go. Okay. So body, wing, and ear. That looks pretty good, huh? Alright, so now we need eyes on this little guy. And do we want to put a mouth? Not sure on that one. I don't usually, but maybe, we'll see. So, for eyes on this guy, we're going to be cutting out pieces of felt, just like for the rest of the body. So, you take a piece of paper, just a little scrap piece of paper from the rest of the pattern stuff, and so the eyes would probably be right about here. Well, edge of the head's here, edge is there, so it'd be more like that. And like there. Okay, so we've got the location. Now, I tend to do kind of wonky eyes. So we've got one that's a bit bigger and one that's a bit smaller. And I also like doing a little heart right there. So the heart would be right about there. So, okay, well, that's a little better. Okay, so as you can see, I'm reusing all the pieces, and it doesn't have to be an exact science. For these ones, I'm not gonna bother trying to make them exactly symmetrical. Just kind of a rough shaping works generally. Those. And for the pattern pieces, especially for these, it's a stuffed animal. It doesn't have to be exact. At the end of the day, the pattern pieces that you're making are just a guideline, and if you decide you want to change something up partway through, that's fine, especially because these are pretty much entirely sculptural. So if the art form decides that it wants to be something completely different partway through, go for it. And for this, we're using felt, but if you have some other kind of material at home, you can use that too. Just be aware that if it can fray, it will fray, and the sewing techniques that we're gonna do for this are for materials that don't fray, so just be aware. There we go. So we've got the body, and the wing, and the ear, and a little heart, and the smaller eye, and where'd the bigger one go? Where'd it go? There it is. It was sitting on it. And you could totally just do two of the same sized eye, or no eyes, or whatever you want to do. It's fine. Or a completely different animal together. You could just do like X's for eyes. Whatever you want to do. Alright. But yeah, that's not looking too shabby, so. Alright. For this, you can tell that I usually do the hearts in red on that one. So, we'll do red for the heart guy. Where did I put the scissors? Where did I put the scissors? Okay, and for these, we're gonna bust out the sewing scissors. These ones are Fiskars. They work pretty well. Okay, and ordinarily I just leave it attached, but it's a small enough piece that, I mean, attached will like cut it out, but it's a small enough piece and there's been some cuts around it already, so I'll just do a rough cut around the shape Okay, so rough cut around the shape. There we go. And you can pin it in place, but especially for the smaller pieces, it's easier for me at least to just hold one corner and rotate it as I'm cutting. But then again, I've also done a lot of these, so however works for you, that is fine. Okay, so you've got a little heart. Just make sure that it's shaped how you want it. You can trim it up after. That works pretty good though. I like it. So we've got this guy. And take all the little bits and put them in the scrap filling pile over here. So, partway done. And kind of like how that works. So the body's going to be out of this. Alright, so we don't need the heart anymore. That's over here in the done pile. The eyes and the ears and wings are probably going to be out of the same color, so we'll just stick those over there for right now. The body, we need 2 pieces. So, a really easy way to do that is to just fold it over and put the piece on there, cut 2 at once. Or if you wanted like the front and the back to be 2 different ones, you could just do the fold and cut that and then do the same thing on another one. But figure I might as well just do everything out of one. And doing it in a lighter color would make the stitching easier to see for you guys too, so that's something. Alright, and just scooch it over. And for this one, I've got the seam allowance and everything included, so that's why it's not got a lot extra on the edges. Otherwise, it would need to be like over here about. Okay. And here we have one of the issues that I have with pins. So on a positive, it keeps everything where you want it. On a negative, it kind of distorts the piece of it. But if you cut part of it and then unpin it or reposition stuff to make sure everything's where you need it to be, then it works. So just keep that in mind when you're working with stuff. And just like for the heart, I'm gonna come around and do this side first, just like this part, because that way it'd be easier to free the lighter sections, I suppose, if you will. So just go in and then make sure that the other bits that aren't in the pattern are away from what you're doing. And you can use a shorter bladed scissor. It's just, these are the most accessible ones that I have right now. And they work pretty good and they're nice and sharp. And being that I can't really go out and get them sharpened right now, yeah. It's got a really tiny waist and just tiny stick legs. Got that. So we have the body now. So there's that. Set that one off to the side. Okay, now the kind of oatmeal color and the dark brown, there we go, really work well together. So we'll do the ears, wings, and eyes out of the dark brown. And then you can see it's kind of got some angles on there, so you just take the scissors and clean them up a little bit. And there we have our little bat friend all ready to get sewn together. And now a word from our sponsors. And now a word from our sponsors at Three Whiskers, which, you know, my Etsy store, basically. So, if you'd like this guy, or another bat, or some kind of critter with the same pattern, or one of my other many designs, there's going to be a link down in the description to my Etsy store, where there's all kinds of fun critters. So, I've got this guy over here, and let's sew him up. Okay, so first you want to do the extremities. Well, first you want to thread the needle. So, I showed you how to thread a needle in the last video, but just to go over it again, you get your piece of thread and your needle, and if I can get it to focus on my hands. There we go. There we go. So it's threaded, and then you get both ends of the thread together. Come on. 1, 2, 3 around. Secure the threads. Pull the needle through. So you've got a quilter's knot now. And ordinarily, I would either do a complementary color, so like a tan on the brown and a dark brown on the tan or something, but I'm just going to do black for everything because it works with everything. So, first off, you figure out where you want all the bits. And I usually do the eyes and stuff first, just because it's easier to work with that way. Alright, that's sticky right there. If the piece that you're working with is already part of something, then you would have to go in from just the back of whatever it is that you're doing, because it's on a static surface. For something like this, you could go through the back of the actual piece if you want to, but I'm just going to go through here, through the applique, because that's what the topical bits are. It would be an applique. So, got that, and then you take a, there we go, you take a stitch behind, and if you wanted to make it more pronounced, to make it look like stitching, you could like take a stitch out here and make it more jagged, or however you want to do it. But take a stitch to get it started. And then you can see right there. And this is a blanket stitch. Tends to be the one that I use for pretty much everything. Okay. And once you have the first couple of stitches on and you're holding it down there, you don't necessarily need the pins holding everything together, especially if it's a smaller piece like this. So, up to you how you want to do it on that one. Just something to keep in mind. And you don't have to, but you know, it's kind of generally advised to try and keep all your stitches relatively even. Okay. And then for corners, just, you know, give it a bit of a tug so that it actually sits where you want it to. So we've got around to the end there, and you just take a stitch into where the first stitch is, do the same thing so that it completes the whole line, and then you take a small stitch like into the stitching right there. 1, 2, 3, and this is locking the thread. You're tying it off, you're locking it in. So it's in there. It's not doing anything unless you cut it. And then you take the needle and poke it back through to backstitch it, just to make sure that everything's secure, and that if it comes out on that side, it won't like have random fringy bits sticking up. So I'll cut that right there. Alright, so we've got a little heart. And I'm going to cut the camera feed for right now and do the eyes and come back in a bit. Alright, so we've got the main face done. Now we're going to go to the extremities. So we've got the ears and the wings. The body is the only part that's going to have stuffing in it, so don't need to worry about that. For the wings, if you want to, you can put an extra stitch down the center of the, where the fingers would be, just to give it some more definition. I don't usually, so we're gonna skip that for right now, but if you want to see what that would look like, let me know and I'll do that in a future one. Also, especially if you're doing stuff by hand, you're going to want to start this one here, start this one down here, and the same with the ears, because as you pull the thread tighter, it will like curve. So you'll end up with one wing curving this way and one wing curving the opposite way. And if you start both of them at the same point, then one will be curving forward and one will be curving the same way, but it'll have to be going back. So basically not aerodynamic in the slightest. Alright, so we've got it so that the knot is on the inside. You can't really see it, but it's right there. The knot is on the inside, and just like for the topical stitches for the heart and stuff, you take a stitch on the back, bring it forward, and that's just like the anchor stitch. And then you take a stitch on the back, wrap the thread around, and go. Stitch. Come on. Stitch. Wrap. Pull. And just keep doing that around the entire perimeter. And I'm showing it on the wing just because there's more diversity in the shape, so it's kind of harder to get it how you need it to be sometimes. Alright, if you have some beeswax, ideally like the sewing beeswax like this, or just wax in general, if you run the thread through the wax, it significantly cuts down on the possibility of the thread getting tangled, which I've been dealing with for the last hour or so, because I kept forgetting that that was a thing. So we wax the thread. The thread's got a knot in it. That is set. Okay, now depending on how you want to do this, you either pin the pieces on the inside, and then you would have to flip it right side out. We're not going to do that. A, the body's too small for all the pieces to really fit in there and still be able to flip it, and B, it's not going to fray anyway. It's fine. It works. So you just kind of line up how you want everything to sit. And actually, because there's no like gusset or anything for the body, it's just the front and the back, you might want to just pop a pin in the middle here so that those pieces remain just static. And then you can slip the ears in the top. And you pin it, and the other one. And then you pin it. Does that look right? Yeah, that looks right. Okay, and then you come in with the wings, and right here, it dips in a little bit. That's the shoulder. So, you want to make sure that the one that's kind of angled out towards the front is on the right side. Otherwise, your little bat dude is going to be flying backwards, and you don't want that. I mean, for the character design it might work, but in this instance, you don't want that. So, oh yeah, and if you wanted to give him a nose, this would kind of simulate how that would look. So, there's that too. Alright, so this side is pretty well okay. This side, alright, so it looks like that wing is tilting up more. I like that effect. Oh, yeah, okay. You want it in enough, especially for a sizable piece like that. You want it in the body enough that it's fully anchored and won't have an issue. Also, you need to be aware of where the pieces are because you're going to have to stuff it too. And because this one has a point here, this one needs a point at a equal spot. Okay. Nope. Okay. That works. And then if you have a tag or a particular note or something that you want to pop in there, then you can do that too. Let's see if I can adjust it down. Okay, it's a little more visible now. We're coming to a corner where there's a tag. So you do the normal blanket stitch there. And then for the next one, it's straight down through the tag. And then you keep the thread up on the top and come up from the bottom. So you go all the way through and then come all the way back up. And loop the thread like you would for a regular blanket stitch. Right there. It's not the most elegant of things, but it works. I've gotten up to here sewn, and that's stable. And I realized that I do want to add a nose to this little guy. So and now he has a nose. It's a really simple, really basic nose, but it's a very cute nose. And I like it. Okay. Alrighty, now for the stuffing. So We've got like random scraps from back construction. We've got bits of floof. From other projects. I'll just leave the rest of that in there. And then we've got fiberfill. So I'm gonna see how much we can do with this and then go from there. Okay, and there we go. Alright, so we've got that. You usually want to, it's like everything's stuffed in there. So if you wanted to add any herbs or anything for like a sleep aid or what have you, you can do that. It just might make a difference as to whether or not you can wash it, but if it's felt, you can't really wash it anyway. But once you've stuffed everything, you need to push it back from the edge by like a good half an inch or so. There's not really anything under where my fingers are right now. And then either pin or clamp it in place so that you can go in with your needle. Alright, so this is our little bat friend. It's quite nice. Quite nice indeed. Alright, so if you want to see more like this, more DIY stuff and interesting fun projects and things, hit the subscribe button down below and the bell icon next to it so you're notified when I upload. I'll have a playlist up in the iCard for other projects that I've put together, and there's a couple of things in the next couple of weeks that are going to be popping up too. And over there is something that YouTube thinks you might like. The other projects and stuff will be like over here. And over here is a link to my botany channel where I talk about plants and fun things like that. All the links to my social medias and my blogs and stuff will be down in the description below. And if you have any suggestions or requests for future critters to mock up in plushie form, leave them in the comments down below. Alright. Have a good one, guys. See you later. Bye, everybody.